Hey everybody, my name is Sami. I'm a partner at OSS Capital, and like it was just said, I spent a lot of time at Masari focused on DePIN, and recently got Bittensor pilled or Tau pilled. Just a show of hands, how many people have heard of Bittensor? Okay, so a good amount, but how many people actually know what the fuck Bittensor's doing? Yeah, there's like 3 hands, so this is perfect. By the end of this talk, I'm hoping people will like understand Bittensor a little bit more, and hopefully I can maybe Bittensor pill some of you. So we'll start off very kind of high level. What is Bittensor? I describe it a different way every time, and I've heard it described 50 other ways. So a few ways I've heard it described, or how I describe it, is a launchpad for AI networks. You have it described as a platform for digital commodity networks, an incentive distribution network. The Spock King himself, Chamath Palihapitiya, described it as a platform for solving technical problems. And then my favorite from Kyle Samani, the one and only, nonsense. And they're all kind of technically correct. So this is how I usually start when I'm explaining Bittensor to somebody. I start with Bitcoin. Bitcoin became the largest compute network in the world simply by having this programmatic incentive mechanism and rewarding miners for a very simple but specific action, which was producing cryptographic hashes. Bittensor is building on this concept where it wants to create this generalized platform that can nest a bunch of different incentive mechanisms and use them together to produce better machine intelligence. And so the problem that emerged was like, okay, if you want to build an incentive mechanism for an AI-related task or service, it requires this new or a new consensus mechanism that is subjective. And so by subjective, I mean a scenario where there's a lack of objective ground truth or a definitive way to measure quality or accuracy. And the example I'll give here is like, let's say there was this AI network that was trying to incentivize the best image models to emerge on the network. So a user sends a prompt, which is like, give me a picture of a cool car in New York City. Each miner generates something different because they have different taste, right? And then when it comes time to validate for the network to come to consensus on which one is the coolest, each validator also has a different view on which car is the coolest. And if you look at the broader like DePIN space and also other utility networks, they all have very definitive ways to either measure accuracy or to like a ground truth. So storage networks, they use cryptographic proofs. Compute, you use like redundant compute where you can verify yes, this compute is correct because every other miner got the same output. And then with DePINs like Helium and Hive Mapper, there's a way to verify that this hotspot, for example, in Helium, is actually in the location that the user is claiming. So the TLDR here, and I'm sorry if this is getting really boring, we'll pass by this stuff in a little bit or after this slide, but YC incentivizes validators to come to consensus when there's no clear binary outcome or ground truth. And so it's agnostic to what is being measured and the methodology applied. And so real quickly, within Bittensor, each subnet is its own incentive mechanism. And they're all focused on optimizing a specific objective function. It has its own miners and its own validators. And then how these subnets receive emissions from the actual protocol itself, like how they get tau, is currently based on a like voting mechanism by the top 64 validators. Based on like which subnet's producing the most value, you can clearly see how there's some problems with that. And so in around, hopefully by the end of the year, there will be a new upgrade which turns this distribution mechanism into an automated process. Okay, so that's great and all. Is there anything actually useful happening on Bittensor? Let's find out. So if we look at the actual subnets that exist right now, you have, just within the data sector, you have multiple subnets that are focused on like indexing data, creating synthetic data, embedding that data, chunking that data, indexing that data. Within model creation, you have numerous projects building subnets to do text-to-speech, generating models that can do text-to-speech, or pre-training models, or creating role-play LLMs. There's a handful of compute subnets, as you can see. There's a bunch of subnets working on research problems like protein folding, AI model optimization, graphical problems. And if you look at, so this is a great market map by Casey Caruso, and it's the decentralized AI map, or for the decentralized AI sector. And you can see Bittensor in the very little corner. It's a coordination layer. And I agree, that's technically correct. But if I was to update this, it would look a little something like this, right? You have all these other sub-networks within Bittensor that are active participants within every single subsector within AI. And I'm not blaming Casey, by the way, at all. I think the community needs to do a better job of bringing more awareness to these subnets. So let's talk about some of the accomplishments. Subnet 2, Omron, became the largest ZK-ML compute cluster in 2 weeks. Targon is doing 4 cents per million tokens, or 0.04 cents per, no, 4 cents per million tokens, which is the absolute cheapest. The pre-training subnet trained a model that surpasses Llama 2 using a GPU cluster that's 50 times smaller than what Meta had. And you can just go down this list. So like there's a subnet that has over 2,800 GPUs. You have 2 subnets that have created extremely large public data sets. Like, you know, subnet 24 has the largest multimodal open data set. It's over 60 million YouTube videos scraped, 65K downloads on Hugging Face. There's the largest public the public Reddit data set as well was collected by a Bittensor subnet. So there's actual accomplishments or value being created by Bittensor. And like, not to be biased, obviously I am very biased, but when I look at the decentralized AI landscape, there's a lot of really strong teams building there, but there's no outputs yet. And maybe it'll take time for them, but Bittensor's the only area where I'm actually seeing substance. So just to zoom out real quickly, Bittensor isn't really focused on the on-chain economy. And when I say on-chain economy, I'm talking like projects like Wayfinder, Morpheus, Ritual, which are doing on-chain inferencing, or they want to create like a smart agent platform. Bittensor's just focused on anything that can be improved, any service that can be improved with a incentive mechanism, similar to DePIN, right? It's like what service or market can be infiltrated or disrupted with an incentive mechanism. So again, like if you draw this like 2-axis matrix and you look at like the off-chain economy versus the on-chain economy, you have a lot of other protocols that are focused on the on-chain economy, not as much focus on AI for the off-chain economy. And so yeah, at the end of the day, all these different AI networks are focused on or competing for really smart AI researchers and engineers. I'll tell you, there's a lot of them within Bittensor. You have miners within Bittensor that work at DeepMind, Anthropic, and in their free time, they just like to come and compete on different subnets. You can think of each subnet as basically like its own competitive marketplace where whoever can produce the best resource or whatever that network is optimizing for will win and be rewarded for it. So again, like, what's appealing to miners? Come and participate in model training challenges. Come work on research problems. Come contribute your compute resources similar to like other DePINs. And by the way, I do think compute should be included within DePIN. That's just my personal preference. But so that essentially means that Bittensor is almost like this decentralized labor platform where people can monetize their skills, their expertise, and their resources. I'm going to skip through that one. Yeah, I guess I'll just end with this. This was something I posted on Twitter a long time ago when there was some FUD happening. But, you know, with Bittensor, the left curve just knows the vibes are right. And I thought this interaction was hilarious where you had people saying, I don't know what Bittensor is, but, you know, it's my biggest bag. And then someone says, believe me when I tell you, I do not have the slightest clue. And then the last person's like, I didn't even know it worked. Bullish, right? And I think you have people on the left curve that can just sense that the community is strong, that the mission is strong. And then on the right curve, this is obviously the co-founder, but there's a lot of smart people working there. And I'll go ahead and wrap up there. Thank you, everybody.